Divine Truth Events. These are events and presentations by Jesus and Mary. This presentation is part of the General Question series, and it is a question and answer session from people in Kentucky. Presented by Jesus on the 7th of September 2013 in Kentucky, New South Wales, Australia. This is part 1.
Okay, let's go on. Well, who was next? It was Eloisa, wasn't it? Yeah.
Thanks. AJ, I just wanted to ask you about some childhood abuse issues.
Mm-hmm.
I began opening up to them, and I've got to a point where I'm kind of blocked, and I'm suspecting that there's quite a lot of spirit influence and that I could have been quite out of body, because I can only remember from my waist down, and I've only got kind of images of it rather than a lot of the feelings associated with it. I am feeling that I've obviously got quite a lot of terror around this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what my question is, but I just was wondering if you could maybe give me some pointers.
Isn't your question about being blocked primarily to it?
Yeah, it's about being blocked.
Yep. Okay, well, the main reason why we're ever blocked is because we're terrified. And we're unwilling to experience the terror.
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing you need to allow yourself to feel is the unwillingness.
Okay.
To feel the terror. So, and that means just writing down all the reasons why you think you shouldn't have to do it.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep.
Now, a lot of those reasons, when we've been abused generally, a lot of those reasons surround the fact that other people did it to us, and we don't feel that we should have to deal with it. We feel they should have to deal with it. Now, unfortunately, though, the only problem with that kind of idea or concept is the emotions are within us. The emotions. So if I'm looking at it from my personal perspective, the emotions are in me. If I expect you to fix it, there is no way in the end, no matter how sorry you are for what you may have done, there is no way in the end that you can fix it. Because the emotions about it are in me.
Yeah.
And I have total control over my own emotions. There's nobody else that has total control over my own emotions other than myself. So again, it's probably an issue of looking at personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And also love of yourself. And one of the things that, if I go back to Teresa's issue with regard to the finance, if you truly love yourself, you would not overextend yourself. If you truly loved yourself, you wouldn't do it. Does that make sense? You'd know at every moment what your financial position is. You'd know at every moment what you would choose to spend and how wise the decision you're making is in terms of your own sense of love of yourself. If you truly loved another, you wouldn't do it either, right? Because you wouldn't expect somebody else to take responsibility for your life. So they are issues of love. Now, if we come back to this situation with regard to feeling about abuse issues, in a lot of ways there are similar issues of love of self involved, because when you truly love yourself, you're willing to feel all of your own emotions when you really love yourself. So if you're not feeling all of your own emotions yet, part of the issue is the lack of love of self.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Now, of course, spirits around you will want to influence you to not love yourself.
And
Because
that's happening heaps.
Yep, and you know that that's frequently occurring still. But if you make choices yourself to not love yourself, and one choice is to not feel your own feelings, that is a choice to not love yourself. And if you make choices to not love yourself, how can you expect other people to love you?
Yeah, I can't.
You can't really expect other people to love you if you're already making choices to not love yourself. So now we've identified two issues here. One, firstly, is the terror, the unwillingness to feel the terror. And the unwillingness to feel the terror is also related to a lack of love of yourself. Does that make sense? Because if you truly loved yourself, you would choose to feel the terror.
Yeah.
And whenever you get stuck, it's because you're choosing to not feel the terror. And that means in that moment you're choosing to not love yourself. But you don't see that as a link. Most people who have been abused don't link those two things together. What they do is this inside of themselves instead. They go, I'm loving myself by not feeling the terror.
Yeah.
That's what they think.
Because it keeps me safe.
No, but that's not true. You see, while the terror is in you, your law of attraction, the law of attraction itself is going to be attracted, events are going to be attracted to trigger your terror. So what you're going to do while the terror is in you is you're going to attract events that actually make you feel more unsafe.
Yeah.
So you're not even being honest with yourself if you think that not feeling your fear makes you safer.
Yeah, but am I saying, is that what I'm saying to myself?
Of course you're saying that, but it's not true.
Yeah, and
right?
I'm beginning to see that. It's pretty yucky.
The reality is most people who have been abused finish up having some kind of sexual trauma later in their life. Why does that happen? Because they're unwilling to feel the trauma itself and unwilling to feel the emotions that the trauma of their childhood triggered. And as a result, the emotions within them cause attractions where other people notice that they are people who've been abused and therefore probably open to being abused again. And then, of course, people who are predators decide to manipulate that situation to harm the person even in their adult life. So the reality is, while you're holding on to this traumatic abuse from childhood, you're actually making your adult life more unsafe than safe.
Yeah.
Right? And this is something we also need to understand. You see, a lot of the times when it comes to abuse, we're telling ourselves, as long as I can stay away from the fear, I'll be safe. As long as I stay away from, this situation or that situation, I'll be safe. Not true. While the fear and other emotions within you about your sexual trauma from your childhood remain within you, the law of attraction is going to work, and that's going to pull to you other people who abuse the situation. In other words, they realise there are people who are predators who can tell that person's been abused, that person has not, that person's been abused, that person has not. And they can tell that if they attack a person who's been abused, most of the time they'll get away with it. Right? This is how pedophiles work, don't they? They attack children who they know, the parents or the child themselves, will enter a situation where they feel they'll be able to get away with it.
What do I do? I just happens because I don't know whether it's
No.
or not, or whether it's me.
Just stop and breathe, stop. You're trying to go away and you're just getting overcloaked straight away. So stop and breathe. The subject matter is matter that you're not addressing emotionally and you try to get away. And you need to just stay present and breathe. Does that make sense? Stay present and breathe. Breathe. Right?
Not cry.
No, you're allowed to go outside and have a cry. That's fine. But whenever you go into this very panicky place, right, it is because you are trying to get away from the experience, not because you're having one.
Experiences as an adult as well as a child.
Exactly.
Kind of cumulative stuff.
Exactly.
That I'm here for. That's all you.
Exactly.
I'm really sorry because you're talking to her.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a number of people in the audience who have been abused sexually, and this material applies to all of them, right? But what happened just there was you did not want to feel your grief, and so that then allows a spirit to go over you. Does that make sense? To overcome you.
I have spirits like
All the time.
You
Yes.
know that. And there's addictions to the spirits, and
Yeah, if you hold the mic up a bit closer so I can hear you probably.
I'll just breathe. So yesterday when I got into the car with Dave...
Yeah, I don't want to go over any experiences with you because what you're going to find is that you want to tell me stories, and the reason why you want to tell me stories is you do not want to feel certain things. The reason why spirits are with you all the time is because you do not want to feel.
I've tried.
No, you haven't. I'm sorry.
You don't think
No.
that 8-year-old experience that came through in July was me and my experience?
No, what I'm saying is you're trying to avoid your grief and terror. Your grief and terror, your emotions, you're trying to avoid them all the time. And this causes spirits to be with you all the time, helping you avoid your own emotions.
It's so hard. It is so hard. I'm trying everything that I can. I've read all of your booklets in the last 4 weeks, and I have worked so hard every day since I met you.
Yeah, but I'm saying to you that you want these spirits with you. You want them with you. Right?
Yeah, I know, because I'm so freaked out of myself that
No,
I'm not
it's not.
there.
It's because you're unwilling to feel your terror. You say it's because I'm freaked out. No, that's not the justification. You're freaked out, I agree. Every single person who's ever had any sexual abuse in their childhood generally gets very frightened of addressing the issue. I agree with that. But you don't want to feel how frightened you are. That's your problem. You don't want to feel it. See, if you wanted to feel it, then you would be able to feel it without being overcloaked by spirits all the time.
How do you tell if you're overcloaked by spirits?
Well,
Because what
you
I
just gave an
thought-
example of it.
But what I thought when I didn't even know at 8.
No, but you just gave an example of it. Your question was, how do I know? You just showed yourself how you know. Whenever you respond like that, you're way away from yourself.
Okay. Yeah, and
Does
I
that make
was
sense?
dissociated at the time, of course.
Yeah, you need
as
to hold the
well.
microphone way up higher. Okay, we'll hand the microphone back to Eloisa and I'll talk to her. But if you're going to do what you just did, you're going away from your fear. You're not actually in your fear. No, you said you didn't want to talk about it, and that's okay, so sit down and we'll talk to Eloisa. Because there's someone who does want to deal with her fear, so I want to talk to her about it. So the key thing with regard to fear is that you sit and own it. You feel it. You don't want to run away from it all the time. That's the key thing. Now, when you go away from your body and you run away from your fear, that's when you get a lot of heavy spirit influence. That's when other spirits, and sometimes there's two groups of spirits. There's a group of spirits who have been abused themselves, who surround you, and they're going, no, don't feel anything, because that's how they feel. Don't feel anything, don't you feel anything. And so that group of spirits surround you, and that group of spirits is saying to you, don't feel anything. Then you also have a group of spirits around you who have been abusers or pedophiles in the past. And they go, you beauty, this person doesn't want to feel anything, now's my opportunity to attack them in some way, whether that be sexually or physically in terms of violence. And often the two spirits surrounding you, there's two groups of spirits surrounding you, are actually in a bit of a battle with each other even. Does that make sense? But all of that would go away if there was a willingness to feel the terror.
Okay.
And this is where our primary problem is on earth. We don't believe that we are capable of experiencing our terror. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's our belief. That's our primary belief. That's the thing we need to pray about.
Okay. So, just to reiterate what you're saying, so I'm getting it, is just to pray about how much I don't want to and how much I believe I can't, and like start there and just ask to be shown that I can, or I don't know, for some courage or pointers on what to do.
Well, yeah, I haven't finished yet, but
Sorry, AJ.
I'll summarise it at the end for you.
Thank you.
So, number one is understand that every time you get stagnant, every time you have tuned out, you've tuned out because you're terrified. So that's number one. So honour that. Does that make sense? Honour that by feeling that. Yeah?
And when you say feeling that, just own that I'm terrified.
Just own that you're terrified. And say to yourself, look, like I'm numb and I'm stagnant and I'm not feeling anything today, and that's because I'm terrified.
Yep. Well, can I just add a little? I'm noticing, like, when I engage sexually with Pete, that it's beginning to happen. It's like before I was just totally numb and not noticing, and now I'm noticing just how before, like, you know, it's like, oh, yep, cool, let's do it, and then it's like I said to Pete, like, I was like, I can't, like, I'm just already clamping up, like I'm already disappearing, you know.
Yeah.
And in the past, I've just gone through it and then felt bad afterwards.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, I think that's terror. Like,
That's right.
I think that's showing me that this somehow is terrifying.
Yep. So So that's the first thing, acknowledge that you're terrified.
Okay.
You will find for most people who abuse, they very rarely, if ever, acknowledge their own terror.
Yep.
Right? And the problem with not acknowledging your own terror is that you usually, every time you feel the potential for terror, you try to get away from yourself. And as soon as you get away from yourself, some spirits come in, influence your life in some way. In some cases, they overcloak you completely. Does that make sense? And so you need to see that the reason why these spirits are overcloaking you completely under those circumstances, if that's happening, is because you don't want to acknowledge or feel your terror. It's always because of that. All right? So that's number one. So the question then also, there are parts of that associated to that, and that is, what are your beliefs about terror?
All right. Yep.
Now, the average person on the earth believes that terror should be something they never have to experience. Right?
Yep.
They believe that it's impossible to experience it and survive.
Yep.
Right? They believe that you shouldn't have to experience it. Right? So there's often an anger associated with experiencing it, and feel we shouldn't have to. And we feel that the person who created it should be punished for it.
Yeah.
Right? And so those belief systems generally cause us, as soon as we start to feel any terror, they cause us to revert to either anger or total tune out, total zone out. We do one or the two, right? We either go and get really, really angry or we tune out.
Yep.
Yeah?
Definitely.
Now, we need to acknowledge that we have terror, but we also, and this is point number 2, we need to see what our justifications of holding on to terror are.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
What do we tell ourselves so that we hold on to being terrified? What are the messages we give ourselves all the time? So you'd give yourself some messages, wouldn't you, Eloise?
Yeah.
Can you recognise them?
I'm just trying to think, because I think I've done them for so long that they're like auto.
Yeah, most of them will be automatic for a person who's been abused. Generally, avoiding terror became the very first priority in their childhood, and therefore they are usually adept at it.
Yeah.
Right? They are they are the most experienced people generally on the planet of how to get away with not feeling terror. Right?
Well, that's how I feel, and it's like now I'm just like having to relearn how to feel everything,
I
For
agree.
the first time, having to feel everything.
Yep.
So to answer your question, I think what I do is I do something else immediately.
So all right, try to keep yourself busy doing something.
Yeah, and I get real busy.
So those of you who've been abused, how many of you use that one? Right? So, yeah, keep yourself busy. That way you don't have to feel about it.
Yep.
Right?
Distract.
Distract yourself, yes?
Do something else, or minimise. Like, go, oh, it's just a movie. Oh, it's just a. Oh, it was. And okay, it's like.
So you're feeling really, really terrified, and you were triggered by, say, a movie that you were watching and some kind of situation in the movie, and then you're going, oh, but it's just a movie, I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah, instead of just...
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, no worries.
Or subsequent events attracted after the abuse that were pretty abusive. Just saying, oh, it didn't matter, it was my fault.
Blame yourself.
Yeah.
So this is a big thing most abuse victims do, is they learn to blame themselves when anything goes wrong. And it's actually a way of avoiding terror. Yeah.
Yep. Eat.
Eat, yeah.
Yep.
So shall we call all of those things physical addictions?
Yeah.
So many abuse victims either go into some kind of physical addiction like eating, drugs, drink, alcohol, or some kind of thing like that, or they avoid them intensely. So they go the opposite direction where they want total control of everything in every situation, and whenever they haven't got total control, that's it, they're out the door. Yep.
Definitely.
Okay.
Emotional ways will be angry, or get angry rather than...
So when you get terrified, There's a desire to just get in an anger with anybody who triggered you or whatever triggered you.
I'm beginning now to be where he said, like, blame my brother rather than myself, and the rage is at him now. But it's more, my self-attack. I was going to say just blaming others, like, sort of taking it out on someone else to avoid it.
And in the end, blaming others, by the way, while it's an improvement on blaming yourself,
It's the same thing.
at the end of the day, it still doesn't really help get to your grief. Does that make sense?
I've discovered that.
Yeah. So there are many people in the spirit world who have passed over into the spirit world who have been abused on earth, and they've blamed other people so much that they've become murderous or murderers in the spirit world. What they do to do that is they overcloak people on earth and who they hate, who are like the person who hurt them, and they just drive them nuts until they kill themselves or something like that. And that is caused by they're now blaming the person. They're not blaming themselves anymore. So it's good that they're not blaming themselves, but in blaming the person, they're still not accessing the terror and the grief.
No.
Right? It's still a way of avoiding the terror and the grief in the end.
And also, I mean, for me, it's like, I have felt real angry, but I wouldn't, like, though sometimes I have wished something bad would happen, I'd feel so bad if something happened to them anyway, then I'd be, like, terrified of what would happen to me.
Well, this is another thing too, though, is that many times people who've been abused feel a sense of guilt about their feelings associated with the abuser. Right? Whether that feeling might be that they loved them or that they wouldn't want them hurt and a number of other things like that. But those feelings are still an avoidance of your own emotions. Does that make sense? Yeah. But most abusers have learnt to teach people they abuse these emotions. They actively teach them. So they say things like, for example, don't you tell anyone, it's our little secret. If you tell somebody, then I'll tell them that you wanted it. And you did really want that anyway, didn't you? And all these kind of things. And they drum that into the child generally to such an extent that the child finishes up feeling like the child was the main reason why the abuse occurred. Right? And this is why self-blame is so damaging with regard to abuse. It's a great way of avoiding grief and fear. But also what it does is it basically says, I'm to blame for what somebody else did to me. Right? And it's not true, of course. You're not to blame.
I don't know if anyone else has got ideas about...
No, so they're good. So the first thing we said was, you're terrified. The second thing we've said now, so maybe I'll write them down, shall I?
Thank you.